What is going on, you guys? This is DerekJ Speaks. Happy New Year to everyone. It's that time again where we run down my favorite matches of the year. This is my ranking of the top 20 best matches in wrestling in 2025. My favorite ones that I saw, because obviously wrestling is huge and I couldn't see everything from every single promotion, even the main ones. You know, there's a lot of WWE and AEW on this list because those are the main companies that I watched, but I did watch some TNA, I watched some New Japan, so there is a presence of those companies on here, but you're not going to see a whole lot of CMLL, even though they had a tremendous year in 2025. You're not going to see anything from there, or AAA, or Marigold, or any, other outside overseas promotions or anything like that. But I do think this is a pretty comprehensive list of all of the matches that I've seen all year. I've spent the past couple of days rewatching a lot of these matches. Some of them I did watch for the first time because I had an inkling that they would probably make it on this list, and whether they did or not, you'll have to wait and see. But of course, before we get into the full list, we have a whole bunch of honorable mentions to get through. Some of these were just really good matches that I enjoyed. A few of them were so good that at one point they were on the list until other matches took place throughout the year that knocked them off. So we'll go through a lot of these here. One of the first ones up is the Men's Royal Rumble match from earlier this year. Now, I know that finish pissed off a lot of people, a lot of Jey Uso haters out there. I don't consider myself a hater of Jey Uso, although I am happy that he is out of the main event title picture for now. You know, he just, as of this recording, just won the tag team titles with his brother. But there was a story there to be told with Jey Uso, and they decided they wanted to tell it, and I don't fault them for doing that. But this match was a lot of fun, one of the better Rumble matches in recent years. We also had the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view this year, and both chamber matches were really good. The Women's Chamber was easily the better of the two, but the Men's Chamber match was really good, predominantly, though, carried by the interaction between John Cena and CM Punk, which was the first time in years we saw Cena and Punk mix it up a little bit, so that was easily the highlight of the match, and was even better than the actual singles match they went on to have later on in the year. We had Ricochet versus Swerve Strickland from the Revolution pay-per-view. In fact, there were a few matches from that Revolution pay-per-view this year. So that one, Konosuke Takeshita and Kenny Omega on that same show for the International Championship was a tremendous match, as well as Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher in a steel cage match at Revolution. Although that match just kinda went a little too far with some of the big high spots and crazy moves that were kicked out of. It doesn't always bother me. You'll see on this list, on the actual list, there's a bunch of matches where they go really crazy with the kickouts. I've noticed that a lot this year alone, especially rewatching a lot of these matches. So I had fresh eyes, all back-to-back binge watching them. It's like, man, wrestling these days, people just kick out of this stuff left and right. It's crazy. But, sometimes it bothers me. Sometimes I can, get really irritated by it. Other times I'm just following along with the story and I can get lost in it. But this is one of those matches that, for as good as it was, a lot of the kickouts did bother me. Will Ospreay and Konosuke Takeshita had a match on the Dynamite Spring Breakthrough episode from April 16th. That was really good. Another match on that same show was Athena and Mercedes in an Owen Hart Cup tournament match. That was the only match, the only singles match we've seen between the two of them. Might we see more in the future? I hope so, because Athena's really great and Mercedes is great, so they had a really good match. Speaking of women's matches, Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch had a good series of matches this year. Their first one being at Backlash, which I thought was really good, and their rematch at Money in the Bank, which Becky won. That's when she won the Intercontinental Championship, and then both women were involved in another great match where Bayley was included in a triple threat match at the Evolution pay-per-view, one of the best WWE pay-per-views of the year, by the way. So that was really good. SummerSlam Night 2, we had a TLC match for the WWE Tag Team titles with the Wyatt Six, the Street Profits, DIY, Motor City Machine Guns, Fraxium, and Phoenix and Andrade. Crazy car crash of a match, but there was a TLC match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles that I thought was a little bit better, and it was on free television, so we'll get to that later. John Cena and Logan Paul at Clash in Paris. The post-heel turn run for John Cena included some really great matches. This was one of them, but just not great enough to make the final list. Konosuke Takeshita, Mascara Dorada, and Kazuchika Okada for the Unified Championship at All Out. This was a surprise one. Dorada was easily the standout and the highlight of the match. And of course, they played up the tension with Okada and Takeshita. I thought that played out very well. Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer for the vacant Women's World Championship at WrestlePalooza. One of the last great matches that Stephanie Vaquer has had on TV, unfortunately. Chris Statlander and Mercedes Moné for the Women's World Championship at Full Gear. Crowd reaction aside, I did enjoy this match. Both Sami Zayn and Ilya Dragunov had some incredible matches in their respective U.S. Championship Open challenges on SmackDown. One of the highlights of SmackDown in the latter part of the year. And one of the best matches each man had was with each other on the October 17th edition of SmackDown. That was when Ilya came back and he took the title from Sami Zayn. And one of Ilya's best matches during his run in the Open Challenges was against Carmelo Hayes just recently on the December 26th episode of SmackDown. That's where he dropped the title to Carmelo. So that was another great match. And of course, over on AEW, they had the Continental Classic. A lot of really great matches this year. But the standouts were easily Kyle Fletcher versus Speedball Mike Bailey from the December 10th edition of Dynamite. And of course, the two semifinal matches at World's End just a few days ago as of this recording. Kazuchika Okada and Takeshita in the opening match. And of course, the second match, which blew that one away, Kyle Fletcher and Jon Moxley. So that rounds out quite an extensive list of honorable mentions. Let's get into the actual full top 20 here. And we start off with number 20, a match so good with a finish so offensively bad that, this match was pretty high on the list before, but really thinking back on that finish and really looking at how it played out, it almost got knocked out of this list altogether. But I decided to include it and put it here at number 20, that being Leon Slater versus Javon Evans for the TNA X Division Championship at Bound for Glory. Like I said, these two were having a terrific match. They had incredible chemistry, and it's a damn shame we didn't get an actual finish to this match. But when you have a working relationship between two promotions like WWE and TNA, you get some situations where neither company wants their guy to lose, and so you end up with a situation like this. Now, I remember the whole Dark State thing, but what I forgot about was that the match ended in a draw, ended in a time limit draw. Then they had their authority figure, Santino Marella, come out and announce that there'd be 5 more minutes. So the crowd came down, they hated the time limit, and then you have the tease that, okay, let's restart things. And then they do, and it's not for another minute and a half, 2 minutes, when Dark State from NXT comes out, attacks both men, and the match ends that way, and just completely killed the crowd. They should have just went to the time limit draw, and then before Santino could even make an announcement, then have Dark State come out and just kill everyone, because doing it the way they did, they just double crapped on the fans. So that was bad. But the actual match, the actual graps between both men were really good. Hopefully we can see this match again in the future, although Javon Evans has been sneaking around on the main roster recently, so I don't know if we'll see it in NXT anytime soon, but if we do, hopefully we actually get a real finish. Number 19 takes us back to February 11th to be specific. The New Japan New Beginning in Osaka show, where Zack Sabre Jr. defended the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Hiroki Goto. 17 years Goto has been around, and that's how long it took for him to finally achieve the highest honor possible and win that IWGP Heavyweight Championship. So many of his contemporaries like Okada and Tanahashi and Nakamura, so many people had come and gone, won that championship, but it was never Goto's time in the sun. And here in this match, these two had a kick-ass match with a great story heading into it, and Goto came out on top. So I really enjoyed this match and definitely thought it belonged on this list. Number 18, we have Cody Rhodes taking on Kevin Owens in a ladder match for the WWE Championship back at the Royal Rumble. I really liked the feud with Cody and Kevin Owens. Man, I sound like a broken record because I feel the same way about Drew McIntyre right now, where it's like they had the opportunity to actually have Kevin win the championship and head into this match as champion, and then Cody just wins it back, but they didn't want to do that. But this was a great match, a very physical, brutal ladder match, and the whole story was that Kevin Owens really brought out this more aggressive, intense side of Cody Rhodes, which led to that big spot in the finish where Cody hit that really brutal Alabama slam on Kevin Owens on that ladder bridge. And knowing what we know now about Kevin Owens and his injuries, that spot looks way worse. I mean, he was already hurt heading into this match, but something like that definitely did not help. But this was a really good match. Number 17 is the TLC match for the WWE Tag Team titles on the April 25th edition of SmackDown between the Street Profits, DIY, and the Motor City Machine Guns. For reasons unknown to me, these guys did not make it onto the WrestleMania card. So they were rewarded with the main event slot on the SmackDown after WrestleMania, commercial free. You could tell these guys were super extra motivated to go out there and go crazy, and they did. Now, WWE did not make the same mistake. They had the tag team titles on the line at SummerSlam, and while that match was really good, it could not live up to the original. I mean, for God's sake, this match had Montez Ford using a prosthetic leg as a weapon. Enough said right there. Number 16, we had the winner-take-all match for the inaugural Unified Championship at All In between Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada. These two had a tremendous series of matches in New Japan many, many years ago, and they're both older, both more beat up, but even the worst or weakest Kenny Omega Kazuchika Okada match is still really good and belongs on a top 20 list for best matches of the year. It's a shame that now, as we head to the end of the year, the Unified Championship is no more. That's very ridiculous, but these two had a great match here. Again, couldn't live up to some of their past glory, but it was still very, very good. And on that same show, we had a great tag team match coming in at number 15 on this list, where the Young Bucks took on Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay. This was a really good match, and I loved the stakes. because the stipulations here made things very unpredictable, where if the Bucks lost, they lost their EVP powers, but if Ospreay and Swerve lost, they would not be able to challenge for the World Championship for up to a year, which now in hindsight for Will Ospreay turned out to actually be true. But heading into this match, it really could have gone either way, and that definitely added a lot to the drama of this match. Many of the near falls, which, considering how this was, it was a big match, but essentially it was an undercard match in the middle of the show, and they were going balls to the wall with a lot of the kickouts here. Again, it comes and goes, whether it bothers me or not. Here, they kind of went a little overboard at times, but again, it played into the drama of the match. The stakes were high, so it made sense. And yeah, it led to some very entertaining segments with the Bucks losing their EVP powers and them being the broke Bucks and disrespected on TV for several weeks, months really. So that was good. Number 14, we come back to Kevin Owens. Here we have Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn in a non-sanctioned match at Elimination Chamber. The big talk coming out of that show, of course, revolved around the John Cena heel turn, which, man, if I could go back in time, I did rewatch that segment, when watching some of these matches. And of course, I watched this match and I watched that show. Rewatching that segment, it's like, as good as it was in a vacuum, isolated on that one night, if I could change things and make sure that never happened, the follow-up and the payoff, the lack thereof, I should say, man, if I could change things and make sure that didn't happen, I would. But nevertheless, the actual match between Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens kind of got lost in the shaft here, but this was a great match. It was very brutal. It was WrestleMania worthy, but of course, they had already other plans for Kevin Owens heading into WrestleMania. Sami was going to take some time off. This show was in Canada, so it made sense to do it here. And these two put on a great show. Only thing it was missing was blood, but of course they saved the blood for the big Cena angle at the end of the show. And, seeing this match and the Cody match, it's like, damn, Kevin Owens, he wasn't around too long in 2025, but two of his matches earlier in the year were still good enough to make my top 20 list, and I miss that guy. Hopefully he does well. I would love to see him back in the ring, but just knowing that he'll have great mobility and way of life, after his neck surgery and his neck injury, hopefully that's the best case scenario for him. So there you go. Number 13, we have John Cena versus AJ Styles from Crown Jewel. Just a complete love letter to pro wrestling between these two. This match came about very inorganically with the whole John Cena tweeting out like, hey, Triple H, let's, listen to the fans and make this match happen. And you all made this match happen. That's not the case. It's just they wanted to do this match, but they didn't have access to John Cena because he wasn't scheduled for TV. So they tried to create that. And, I see through that, but they can do whatever they want to do. So without any real proper build-up, they just went out there and had a damn good match. And both men paid a lot of homage and tribute and respect to a lot of their former opponents and comrades, whether it be AJ Styles paying respect to a lot of his guys in TNA, doing the angel wings and some of Kazarian's moves. And of course, Cena did a choke slam. And of course, the big spot everyone talks about is the Sister Abigail spot. So these two had a great match here. It was very, very great. It was a lot of just them hitting other people's moves, so I can see some people having an issue with that. Me personally, I thought that's what made the match, and that's what made it special. So that's why it's on this list. Number 12, we have Anarchy in the Arena from Double or Nothing, with the Death Riders and the Young Bucks, of course, taking on Swerve Strickland, Kenny Omega, the Ops, and Willow Nightingale. And that was one of the aspects of this match that was really cool this year, is that they included Willow and they included Marina Shafir. And this was craziness. We've had Anarchy in the Arena for the past couple of years. The first one back in 2022 made my list that year as one of my favorite matches. The past couple of years have all basically been a wash. They've all kind of blended together, nothing very memorable, which is crazy because all these matches, these guys are killing each other, and to come away thinking that is crazy. But that's the state of hardcore matches in 2025, is like a lot of them really have to be stellar to impress me because we just get them so frequently, especially in AEW. But this one here was very special. Of course, the Let the Bodies Hit the Floor playing, on a loop in this match. It was fun while it lasted. And some of the craziness, of course, Swerve and the staple gun, the less said about that, the better. And the babyface is getting the win. If nothing else, the reason this match is on this list is because the babyfaces actually won at a time when the babyfaces weren't really winning a whole lot against the Death Riders. So that was very cool to see here. Number 11, we have the Ring of Honor World Championship match between Bandito and Konosuke Takeshita from Supercard of Honor. This took place during All In weekend. That was the same weekend of All In and Saturday night's main event with Goldberg's retirement and, of course, the Evolution PLE. So, very stacked weekend of wrestling. I didn't have time to watch the ROH show or this match, so this was a late watch for me. But, even knowing the outcome and all that and hearing the hype around it, I still went into this, feeling that it would probably make the list, and of course it did. It was just a matter of where to put it, and it is fairly high because this was a damn good match. Bandito has had a tremendous year. He has defended that championship in Ring of Honor proudly. Of course, he formed the team with Brody King out of nowhere, and the two of them went on to have some great success as a tag team, even won the tag team titles. But Bandito has been a really great presence in the ring this year, one of the low-key MVPs of the year, and as well as Takeshita. Takeshita's always been great, though. So seeing these guys have the ability to go out there and have a main event caliber match for the Ring of Honor World Championship, a brand that really does not mean a whole lot, they still went out there and put on a damn good match. So this was a lot of fun. Number 10. We're breaking into the top 10 here, and we start off with the WrestleMania 41 Night 1 main event between John Cena. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa. Kind of slipped up there. We're actually talking about Seth Rollins versus CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. John Cena, I see his name here on my notes. We'll get to him in a bit. But Rollins, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns in the Night 1 main event. These guys had a great match here. Between the two WrestleMania main events this year, this was easily the better of the two. And these three went out there and they tore the house down. Again, a lot of finisher spam, a lot of big kickouts, but the whole story with the drama revolving around Paul Heyman and, of course, him doing the double turn on both Roman and Punk in this match and siding with Seth Rollins. That was a really fun ending, and that led to what it led to. It was pretty underwhelming. The formation of the Vision, which is still a thing now even without Seth, but it's not really lighting the world on fire. But these three on this show had a great match, so there you go. Number 9, now we can get back to John Cena. This is John Cena versus Cody Rhodes in a street fight for the WWE Championship in the main event of SummerSlam Night 2. A complete polar opposite from their WrestleMania Night 2 main event, which sucked and was horrible and a disgrace. These two went out there. Of course, John Cena on the SmackDown prior to this turned back into a babyface. So he came out, had the big babyface pop entrance and all that. Him and Cody went out there and just tore it up. And this really showed me that the John Cena of old, who I thought was not there anymore, who I thought was not capable of having matches like this anymore because he hadn't had a match like this in many, many years. He showed up for this one, and the two of them really had a tremendous back and forth match. And this was the proper passing of the torch between John Cena and Cody Rhodes here, with Cody picking up the win. And looking back on how things went, had John Cena just called it a quits at the end of this match, and that would have been his retirement match right then and there, that would have been far more appropriate and far more well received by fans than what the actual John Cena retirement match was. And we can do without the whole Brock Lesnar crap at the end. But this match was fantastic. Again, sound like a broken record. The finishers, hitting, and the kickouts got a little ridiculous. This match went very long, so, seeing all the AAs and all the crossroads getting kicked out of, it did get pretty ridiculous after a while, but it was still a great match. Number 8, all the way from the beginning of the year, just days into the new year, on January 5th, we had the New Japan Wrestle Dynasty show. That was the joint show with AEW, CMLL, Ring of Honor, what have you. And on that show, Kenny Omega, after missing in-ring action for well over a year with his bout of diverticulitis that almost took his life, he made his big comeback on this show in a match against Gabe Kidd that completely exceeded all expectations I had. Omega had been gone for so long, so coming back for this match, I didn't know what he would really bring to the table here, and he showed out. This turned into way more of a brawl than I thought it would, with a lot of the blood and the table spots, but this match was so great that after it was over, they shot over at Hiroshi Tanahashi on commentary, who was in literal tears looking at this match. So if the match is so good that it made Hiroshi Tanahashi cry, then come on, that has to be top 10. But this was not the only great match that Kenny Omega had this year. Of course, he had a few in the honorable mentions, but another one on this list at number 7 is Kenny Omega versus Ricochet versus Speedball Mike Bailey in a triple threat match for the International Championship at Dynasty. On the night that this took place, on the actual night of the pay-per-view, I did not have as much appreciation for this match as a lot of other people. I remember that show being excessively long, which is the state of most AEW pay-per-views, tell you something you don't know. For some reason, that show was just really long. The main event, I was dreading because I didn't know how that was going to go. So, waiting for that to take place, and then you have this match, which went very, very long, and even rewatching it, it still is a very long match, probably longer than it needed to be, but I just remember not really appreciating it for what it was. And then, of course, we get to that main event with Swerve and Moxley and that dog shit ending, but removed from that, and actually watching this match by itself, I grew a greater appreciation for it as a fantastic match and one of, if not the best triple threat matches in the history of AEW. These three men, and what I loved about it is this was one of those triple threat matches where all three men really interacted with each other throughout majority of the match. A lot of times in triple threat matches, you get one guy gets knocked out, two guys go at it for a few minutes, and the other guy comes back in, another guy gets knocked out. So you have a series of singles matches for a while until like the last 3 to 5 minutes when they do stuff, all three of them. This is one of those cases where all three men, you had that, but for the majority of it, all three men really interacted with each other. Speedball, he had just signed with the company not long before this, so this was really, I've seen his stuff, obviously, but this was really a chance to show what Speedball Mike Bailey had to offer, and this was a great coming out party for him. Ricochet, his booking heading into this match hadn't been the greatest, although it would get worse over the rest of the year until they just randomly created a championship to give him, but here he had a chance to shine. And of course, Kenny Omega, again, I say, and it's crazy because for the rest of the year, Kenny really wasn't doing a whole lot of single stuff, and he's been in tag matches and trios matches, and there's been reports about how banged up he is and how him and Tony Khan or whoever don't really trust him to be in big time singles matches. That's why when they teased stuff with Kyle Fletcher, it never went anywhere, because he probably hasn't been in a position to be in a big match like that. Although now recent reports are that they want him in more top heavy programs and maybe even going after the world championship. Maybe he could even end up being someone to face MJF for that world title in the coming year. But man, the early parts of this year when Kenny first came back, he was killing it. And these 2 back-to-back matches with Gabe Kidd and this triple threat were fantastic. At number 6, I went back and forth a lot with number 6 and number 5 because both matches involved the same woman in 2 terrific matches. And by all accounts, number 6 here probably is the better technical match, but number 5 just had a stronger story with a terrific payoff. So that kind of outweighed it, which is why number 6 here is Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné for the AEW Women's World Championship at All In. This was the big controversial match for the All In pay-per-view, one of the biggest women's matches Tony Khan could have booked for the show, and you had a lot of people scared that Mercedes was just going to continue gobbling up all the championships until she stole the one world title and she'd be the sole owner of the 2 singles women's championships in the company. And they didn't do that. Tony actually won this match, and they had a terrific match. Could have done without the spot where Toni Storm hit her Storm Zero finish like 3 times in rapid succession and Mercedes kicked out of it. But considering the ending was Tony hitting Mercedes with an avalanche Storm Zero and that put her down, that is enough to let it be where it is. And it ranks highly among one of the best matches in the history of AEW, for the women at least. So this was great. But like I said, as a technical match, probably better than number 5, but the story and build up and everything revolving around number 5 on this list was just too good, and it ranked just a smidge above that one. And number 5 here is Toni Storm versus Mariah May in the Hollywood ending match for the AEW Women's World Championship from Revolution, where, I mean, they had glass and blood, light tubes and tables and chairs and all the other garbage we get in a lot of these hardcore matches. But for these 2 and the story that they were telling, it fit. It was proper. It was worth, doing all that, because this was the blow off to a very long feud and storyline between these 2 women that is one of the best stories that they've done in AEW. And, my biggest gripe with it, honestly, is that it didn't end the show. That, and it went far shorter than it probably should have. For this being the big blow-off match, it went like 14 minutes. And I know the word going around is that this match at one point was, at least considered to end the show, but because Mariah May, they had enough foresight to know that she was leaving the company, so they didn't want to put this on last. I really don't understand why that matters, considering the fact that Tony won, and this was a blow-off to a feud. You easily could have ended the show with this, especially with what they ended the show with, that being Copeland and Moxley. This match definitely should have ended the show. Give them an extra 5 or 10 minutes, and that last shot on the stage of Tony and Mariah just laid out, both bloodied and battered and beaten, up on the stage with the words "the end" popping up on the Titantron. That would have been a far more fitting end to the pay-per-view. But as it stands, it was a very fitting end to a great rivalry. Number 4. We're already in the top 5 here. I didn't even realize it. But yeah, number 4. we have another hardcore match, that being the Texas Death Match for the AEW World Championship at All In between Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page. AEW's version of the story-ending match with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns from WrestleMania 40 last year. And of course, that will probably piss off a lot of people. I don't really care. That was what this match essentially was. Jon Moxley had kept that championship held hostage for many, many months. The Death Riders had been running roughshod for many months, and this was the chance for the babyfaces to really fight back and even the odds and put them down. And that's why we had the return of Bryan Danielson and Darby Allin, and of course the finish with Swerve Strickland coming out, taking out the Young Bucks and leaving the chain there for Hangman. And I'll never forget that last visual of Hangman literally hanging Jon Moxley over the ropes, and Moxley squirming and freaking out until he had no choice but to tap out and give up. I thought that was great, and the sight of Hangman opening that briefcase that held the world championship that we literally had not seen on television since October of 2024, last year. He held that championship up victoriously. The fans were going crazy for Hangman in this match, and they exploded when he held up that championship, finally freeing it. I thought this was great, and it was a very satisfying ending to this show, and a very satisfying conclusion for Hangman's story arc back to the good side after he went down a very dark path following the feud with Swerve Strickland. This is what really solidified him being back. But the match where I think that was done also very well is the match that took place on the pay-per-view before this, which was Hangman Adam Page versus Will Ospreay in the finals of the Owen Hart Cup tournament at Double or Nothing. So while the Page-Moxley match was the payoff, the setup for it with Page and Ospreay was a much better match, in my opinion. Now, of course, the Texas Death Match, again, a lot of blood, you had a bed of nails, you had, the tables and the tacks and glass and all that stuff. Maybe there wasn't tacks, it was just glass. And, again, it worked for the story they were telling there. That's what you expect with a Texas Death Match, after all. But just as a wrestling match, I enjoyed the stuff that Page and Ospreay did, because they had a much higher hill to climb here, because this match ended the show, the same show that had that insane Anarchy in the Arena match, which in any other world probably should have ended the show. So seeing that go on as early as it did, and then seeing Hangman and Ospreay go out there for the ending, those first few minutes, it was pretty slow, and the crowd, they were hot for it a little bit, but they were pretty exhausted. But they got those fans into it all the way through. These guys went almost 37 minutes, close to 40 minutes total for this match, and it never waned, it never wavered, it never got dull or boring. And this is one of those matches that literally could have gone either way. This was the perfect final for a tournament like this, where either Ospreay or Hangman being the one to face Moxley at All In would have made sense. And for a long time there, I was convinced that it was going to be Ospreay in that spot, but I had no issues whatsoever with it being Hangman. And these two just left it all out there and had a tremendous match. And it was even better than the actual big championship match it was setting up. That's how good it was. And as we enter the top two here, I think this is a first for my lists, where the top two matches are both women's matches. And following last year, where there wasn't a whole lot of representation of the women in my, countdown, at least from WWE. There was plenty of AEW women's matches, or at least one in particular with Tony and Mariah from All In last year. But WWE didn't have a whole lot of great women's match, at least what I consider to be great women's matches. But this year, They've had a whole bunch of them, but two in particular were so great that they had to make the top of this list here. So at number 2, we have Io Sky defending the Women's World Championship against Rhea Ripley in the main event of the Evolution PLE. These two went out there and tore the house down. This was the main event of an all-women's pay-per-view, but it easily could have been the main event of any pay-per-view. Even, multi-gendered. It could have easily been the main event of any show and still would have been just as good if given the exact same amount of time that they were given here. Now, one of the benefits of this being the kind of show that it was that they were able to go out there and be given 25 minutes. It's not a guarantee they would have had that on a SummerSlam show or a Backlash show or something like that, but here it fit. These two, of course, the big story, Rhea not being able to beat Io at all heading into this match, and of course still coming out of this match, still has not been able to beat Io. So that's a really cool story for Rhea to continue to have. But they had a tremendous match here. At one point, the referee got knocked out, so it turned into a little bit of a brawl. They fought into the crowd. They fought into the stands. A lot of the big near falls, they didn't abuse the near falls of each woman hitting their finishes. I think each woman hit their finish like maybe once or twice each. I know at one point Rhea hit the Riptide, but that was when the referee got knocked out, so that was a phantom cover there. A little bit later on, when the referee did wake back up, Io hit the over the moonsault, and that was a dramatic near fall too. And of course, the big conclusion here was both women crashing down after a Spanish fly from the top rope, and out comes Naomi to crash the party and cash in her Money in the Bank briefcase and steal the Women's World Championship. Of course, I'm torn on that because on one hand, Io and Rhea were having such a great match. It deserved a proper, clean finish with one person definitively beating the other. But on the other hand, Naomi had a great year with her heel turn, the proceed with caution stuff, and I thought this was a great moment for her to solidify herself as a top heel on the show and win the championship and have a big moment for herself after, being on the receiving end of losing a lot of big matches prior to this. She had a chance to end a show standing tall and strong. And unfortunately, it didn't last too long for her because, Big Jim. But for this moment isolated, I thought everything about this was great and deserving of a top spot here. But for as great as this was, it was not as good as the number one option, the number one pick on this list here. And this match has been my number one match of the year since the night it happened. And that is the opening match to WrestleMania 41 Night 2, the triple threat match for the Women's World Championship between Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair. While the journey and build up to this match was very convoluted, it was very obviously a triple threat match weeks and weeks prior to this, but of course WWE gotta be them and overcomplicate things and make the setup to this becoming a triple threat match so unnecessarily messy. But even still, the actual final match here that we got at WrestleMania was great. Io had been ignored and overlooked throughout the entire build-up to this match, and Rhea and Bianca were being completely disrespectful to her, which I thought was the point of the story. It's not a great look for your champion, but I guess it's fine if they win in the end, which Io did here. And unfortunately, this was the match where Bianca did hurt her knuckle and broke her knuckle, and that has led to her being out for the rest of the year. A complete lost, wasted year for Bianca, which is very unfortunate, but she can take solace in that she had the best match on my countdown here. These three just, they tore the house down. I would have loved for this to have gotten maybe a few extra minutes added to it. It was so good. And, looking back on this year, how they've handled how they handled Io in the post of this show as champion, they did her no favors. And unfortunately, I see the same pattern for people like Stephanie Vaquer and Jade Cargill. I don't know why this company is so incapable of booking strong women's world champions on this show. If your name's not Becky Lynch, apparently they don't know how to book you as a champion, I guess, is the message I'm getting. Whether it's Io or Rhea or Tiffany or Jade or Stephanie and all these people who have been champion this year and who have had completely dull reigns as champion. You can only blame them so much. You have to have good creative to back you up, and the creative has not always been there for these ladies. But they still go out there and put on kick-ass matches like this one, which is why this is the number one best match, my favorite match of 2025. Among all the matches I've seen, all the promotions I've looked at, this was easily the best match of the entire year. And after it happened, I knew it was going to be number one and nothing would top it. Io and Rhea at Evolution almost did. And maybe had there been a clean finish between the two of them, maybe it would have been number one. But with the cash in, as fun as that was, that definitely kept it as a solid number two. But that is it. I think I have drawn on long enough here. Thank you guys for listening to this top 20. I really enjoy planning and putting this list together every single year. It's been a lot of fun. And as bad as the creative direction for these shows, whether it's AEW with Dynamite or WWE with SmackDown and even Raw to a certain degree, although Raw has generally been a better show than SmackDown, but even still, the creative direction this year has been very bad. But if this list proved anything, it's that the talent can still go out there, even with lackluster stories and build-up, which a lot of these matches on this list had a lot of very uninspired, dull, boring, uncreative build-up to the matches. But the talent are still able to go out there and put on great matches and really kick-ass matches. So that's big respect to them. I will never, look down on their efforts. Even some of the matches that didn't make the list or some of the ones that were good but not match of the year caliber, everyone goes out there, they work hard. And even the writers and people like that, they work hard too. They have to put a lot of effort and energy into writing these shows. I just am not a big fan of what they have done this year. But like I said in my World's End review, hopefully 2026 is a new year and they can turn over a new leaf. One can only hope. As someone who watches these shows fairly regularly, I at least watch the pay-per-views. The weekly TV, that's a different story. But for someone who follows along with this stuff, all I can do is hope for better. I want to watch these shows. I want to be upset that I missed SmackDown or Dynamite or Collision or whatever. Right now, if I miss one of these shows, I will see a few clips on social media and then move on with my day. But I want to be in a position where it's like, oh man, these shows have just been great every single week, and me missing them is a big deal. And it's like, oh, I gotta go out of my way to watch it. I don't have that feeling. I have not had that feeling once in 2025, other than like a handful of shows here and there. But yeah, so that's where we're at. But again, the wrestlers themselves, the talent themselves, they know how to go out there and work within their own restrictions and put on some great matches. So hopefully we have many more to come in the new year, and hopefully you all will return and enjoy listening to me talk about all this stuff. So until next time, thank you as always. If you like what you heard, like what you see, all that good stuff, you know what to do. Follow me on Twitter/X at DerekJ Speaks, and I'll see you guys in the new year. Take care.